Hello, I'm Danica Hubbard, and welcome to the third episode of Finding My Fulbright. In this episode, we will talk about the moving in process and arrival. This is a personal experience vlog of my Fulbright in Croatia. And just a disclaimer, this content of the vlog does not reflect or represent the United States government. So in the first episode of Finding My Fulbright, we talked about the application cycle of Fulbright scholars and students. In the second episode, we talked about pre-departure and how to prepare for your international adventures abroad. And in this episode, we're going to talk about arrival and what it's like to move in and get settled on the cusp of, in my case, teaching at University of Zadar. Zadar is located just about here on the map, so you can kind of get an idea of where it is. And that's where I'll be spending the next 4 glorious months. So it is right on the Dalmatian coast, and Zadar has a tremendous history and a lot of Roman ruins here that are situated in kind of like an open air museum. You'll walk outside your door and there'll be pillars and columns and walls of ancient history. It's absolutely breathtaking. On moving in to connect with the Fulbright is to process some of the paperwork when you're in country. And again, the Agency for Mobility will help you with all of the details, but there is a packet that they give you called Next Steps, and that was extremely helpful in trying to sort through all of the types of paperwork that will be needed in order to stay and work in the country of Croatia. So in this Next Steps packet, it outlines several documents to have on your person to bring with you when you land. And some of these documents you'll need right away upon landing. For example, the address registration. The address registration will need to be filed within 48 hours of your arrival. So that's one of the first things that I did. And I mentioned in the previous episode, episode 2, that I did secure housing before I came to Croatia, which really helped in the transition in moving in, landing, and getting that address registration completed right away. So my landlord was kind enough to meet me at the police administration office in Zadar. And again, the Agency for Mobility will give you the exact address. We were able to find it. We rented a car and drove from the airport directly to the police administration office, met with my landlord who had the certificate of ownership for the apartment, which is needed for the address registration, the address of the apartment, of course, and then some of the paperwork that goes along with that address registration. I will say that the paperwork is in Croatian, and it is very helpful to have someone who speaks Croatian with you while you're registering all of your paperwork. So again, very helpful that the landlord spent the time. This took about, it took about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to process the paperwork for the address registration. And then the next item on the list was a residence or work permit. That was a little more complicated. Again, more paperwork. And I don't know if I have copies here, but it was all in Croatian. Oh, here, some of the things. This is just probably half of the paperwork. It was all in Croatian, and I did not understand it, but my landlord did, and so did the staff, obviously, and they went back and forth, and I just kept handing over papers that I had followed from the Next Steps document that I received prior to being in country. But as long as you follow that Next Steps document, and be in contact with the embassy. It's very transparent, and they'll help you to secure the types of paperwork that you'll need to stay in country. The next step was to go to the bank to register for what they call an OIB, or tax number. And that's so your grant can be processed and you can be paid in kuna, which is the Croatian denomination, the currency. So that was done the following day with my university contact at University of Zadar, Leonarda, excuse me. And she, again, was kind enough to meet us at the university and drive us to a local bank and then process the OIB with us. My husband was with me just for the week to help me move in. But that, again, took about an hour to process the bank paperwork. You'll have to fill out a tax form from the United States that they'll have readily available, and then, again, produce documents like your passport, social security number, and some other documents as well. Again, and after that, there's a biometric residency card, and that comes later, from my understanding, after the work permit is processed. So I believe that will be another trip to the police administration office to pick up that card. So my apartment is on the 3rd floor, so a few flights of stairs, so factor that in as you're carrying up suitcases. The streets in Old Town are pretty narrow and lovely and ancient, and the streets can be pretty slippery when wet, so just be cautious when you're moving around, especially with large pieces of luggage and moving in. Moving in was pretty seamless. Everything was clean and ready to go. Like I said, it was Wi-Fi ready, so I didn't have to wire up the Wi-Fi or get anyone to come out and service that. I know some other folks who have used Skyroam and some other services for Wi-Fi, but that wasn't the case with me. It was Wi-Fi ready, so we were all set there. Souvenir shops, you can get your postcards and start writing postcards and t-shirts and books and all sorts of things. There are several satchels of lavender. Lavender grows in abundance on the neighboring islands, and you can smell the scent of lavender while walking down the streets. Of course, there is olive oil at every turn, and pastry shops, and beautiful, beautiful cafes for coffee, and lots of salts and delicious cheeses. So, and fish, and pasta, and pizza. So it is a culinary delight here. Moved in and we did a little sightseeing. We did do a city tour, which was very helpful with a guide for about 2 hours. She did to one of the neighboring islands called Dugi Otok, and we went on a sea kayaking adventure, and we did in the cooler. There were about 10 of us on this sea kayaking adventure. We had a nice lunch, and then my husband and some other brave kayakers jumped out of their kayaks and dove off of cliffs. So there was cliff diving from about 30 feet or higher. So that was something. Smaller park than, I'm going to probably mispronounce this, I think it's pronounced Plebice, but it could be different. That's the big national park. That's about 2 hours away, famous for its waterfalls and foliage and beautiful landscape. Krka was a smaller national park, and it was quite lovely. They are known for their smaller waterfalls and also their hydroelectric power. I think they were one of the first in Croatia to have that mechanism. And it was a fascinating place full of history and nature, and we did some hiking on some wooden platforms. It was quite safe and not very crowded, And again, I would recommend that if helped. And stay tuned for the next episode when the teaching begins at University of Zadar, and I'll check back with you at that time.